4 million new jobs, 832,000 on average for the last 3 months, with revisions upwards for the last 2 months. And over the first 6 months, we've created almost 700,000 per month on average. That's more jobs created faster than any other president's first 6 months in history. In comparison, the previous administration only created 1.1 million jobs in their first 6 months. And just last week, new GDP figures showed the United States economy has now made up the losses of the last 18 months and surpassed the pre-pandemic peak. I will note, as always, there may be ups and downs, but thanks to the strong foundation from the American Rescue Plan and the tools it gives us, as well as our vaccination program positions us to weather any challenges without going backwards or shutting down our schools or our economy. I also wanted to note, it's an exciting ringtone. Okay, that yesterday, President Biden released a statement on progress we've made expanding access to quality, affordable health care, a huge priority for him, with the expansion of the special enrollment period, which goes through August 15th. In February, we opened a special enrollment period to provide all Americans the opportunity to sign up for health insurance. In March, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan into law, lowering premiums and saving families an average of $50 per person per month. And later in March, we extended the enrollment deadline to August 15th. 5 months later, the results are clear. More than 2 million Americans have signed up for health coverage. That's exciting. And we also launched a summer Sprint to Coverage campaign earlier this summer, leveraging robust paid media, increased community outreach, and more to get Americans signed up. So for those who don't have health care, go to healthcare.gov and you can sign up there and get more information. Also wanted to provide you all an update on COVID. Today we recorded 821,000 total vaccinations. This is the second day in a row we have got more than 800,000 total shots. The first time we've done this since June 30th and July 1st. Overall, more than 3.2 million Americans have gotten newly vaccinated over the past 7 days. And importantly, as we've seen as a trend over the last few weeks, states with the highest case rates are seeing their vaccination rates grow the fastest. So as we've said from the start, that's exactly what it's going to take to get us out of this pandemic. More Americans stepping up and doing their part to get vaccinated. In addition to encouraging trends on the vaccination front, we're seeing with the pace of vaccinations, we're seeing growing momentum on requirements. And we've seen a number of announcements out this morning. We expect that certainly to continue. So as you know, last week the president announced new requirements for federal employees and contractors and asked the private and public sectors, universities and healthcare systems, state and local governments, and other institutions to take steps. And many of them are answering his call to action. So this week, one of the largest nursing home chains announced they'd require vaccinations for employees. Massachusetts will require vaccination for nursing home staff, and Maryland and Virginia announced vaccination requirements for state employees. I'd note 2 of those 3 states are led by Republican governors. Just today, United Airlines announced it will require all of its roughly 85,000 employees to be vaccinated by the end of September. So our message is simple. We support these vaccination requirements to protect workers, communities, and our country, and we hope to see even more action from the public and private sector over the coming weeks. Last piece for all of you, lots going on here, as you all know. This week, the administration officials held virtual listening sessions with groups representing landlords and tenant advocates to discuss state and local disbursement of emergency rental assistance funds and ways to protect renters from evictions. This is part of our ongoing outreach and ongoing effort to get money out in states and localities. Landlords offered ideas on how grantees might speed delivery and increase access to rental assistance, and tenant advocates expressed challenges renters are facing in accessing emergency rental assistance funds, both issues we want to work to address. In both meetings, administration officials reiterated the commitment made by President Biden that our administration will not rest, nor should state and local governments, until emergency rental assistance dollars reach Americans in need. And as we know, given the rising urgency of containing the spread of the Delta variant, the president's overriding goal is, of course, keeping the American people safe and ideally in their homes. As part of this effort, the CDC has used the legal authority that Congress provided and developed the requisite record for a new targeted and dynamic eviction moratorium focused on counties with high or substantial case rates to protect renters and to help stop the spread of this new and more transmissible COVID variant. The administration believes that this is a proper use of a lawful authority to protect the public health, and the Supreme Court has not ruled otherwise. Ultimately, we hope these combined efforts will keep as many Americans safe and housed as possible. I usually have a week ahead. I will note for all of you that we expect the president to be here for a few days early next week. As you know, the Senate also is expected to be, and we will keep you updated as we know more specific details about his travel plans. Zeke.
First, on COVID, some developments in the states this morning. In Arkansas, a judge there blocked the state from enforcing its ban on schools and enforcing mask mandates. I was wondering if the White House had any reaction to that, and then similarly in Florida, where the legislature there was passing essentially a voucher program to allow parents to pull their kids out of school if there were mask requirements. What's the level of White House engagement right now with all of these different state governments, and for folks who are sort of puzzled by all these federal guidance, state guidance? What's the advice from the White House to parents worried about their kids in school?
Well, since you reminded me, I also want to, for anyone who doesn't know Kevin Munoz, he's one of the amazing people on the press team who does COVID, so just reminded me. We call him Dr. Munoz because he's such a specialist in this area, so I pulled him out here with me today. So I would say, Zeke, that we do have concern, of course, about restrictions that are being put in place in a handful of states or have been put in place around the country that make it more difficult for localities, for schools, for businesses in some places to implement public health guidelines. And our message continues to be that if you don't want to abide by public health guidelines, don't want to use your role as leaders, elected officials, then you should get out of the way and let public health officials guide localities, schools, universities to do the right, or local schools as well, to do exactly the right thing. I think you heard yesterday, or those of you who are here heard Secretary Cardona convey, as it relates to schools specifically, that we do have information from our public health experts, from the CDC, on how we can open up 100% of schools and keep them open in the fall. That's our objective. The only thing preventing that would be if officials in different states and localities put in place restrictions that make that challenging or impossible. And that is certainly concerning to us.
Another COVID one for you. The president a few minutes ago said there are additional vaccination penalties, for lack of a better term, or burdens for those who are not vaccinated that are likely to come in the coming days. I was hoping you might be able to address what some of those are likely to stand as a new policy here at the White House, in addition across the federal government as well, in terms of forms people have to fill out under potential criminal or civil penalty. But is the White House looking at requiring vaccinations for all nursing home workers nationwide, or for people flying on domestic airlines? The foreign component still in the works, but is domestic travel vaccination requirement something that's under consideration?
Well, I know there was also, in addition to the president's comments, some reporting overnight as well that a number of you have asked us about, understandably. And I would say that and the president's comments certainly reflect what we always do in this administration, which is discuss policy options about how we can continue to mount a wartime response against the virus. So what he was conveying, and I think if for those of you who have asked us about reporting overnight, yes, there are early conversations, early discussions about a range of options. Those are all early stage, they're pre-decisional, and I don't have any policy decisions to preview for you because we're not at that point in the process. I know you didn't ask me about this, but since others have, I would also note that there has been some reporting around discussions about around cruises in universities, and that would not be accurate.
Just from a broader 30,000-foot standpoint, why is the administration sort of acting so slowly here? You're highlighting all the different efforts, businesses and some states are taking on this vaccination front. Shouldn't the White House sort of lead in front here to sort of try to really increase the sort of maybe wield that stick a little bit more for people who are still waiting on the sidelines and not rolling up their sleeves?
Well, Zeke, I would say that the president led 8 days ago by delivering a speech where he conveyed that the federal government would be taking actions, conveyed that there would be requirements for federal government employees and contractors, and also asked the public and private sector to take actions on their own. And we're seeing that happening. So we are going to consider a range of options. There are factors, as I think you all know, as you consider these policy options, pros and cons. We're making all decisions through the prism of what is in the interest of public health, but we're going to let that policy process see itself through, and certainly we want to make decisions as expeditiously as possible. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Given the strength of today's jobs numbers, has the president decided that he's not going to seek to renew the beefed up unemployment benefits when they expire next month? I know earlier this summer he said that it would make sense to let them lapse, but that was before the Delta variant really took hold.
There has not been any decision about this at this point.
He's still deciding whether to ask to renew them, whether to seek to renew them or not.
Correct. At this point, they're expiring at the beginning of September. Nothing has changed on that front, but a final decision has not been made.
And then on Afghanistan, the Taliban has made big gains this week. They're surrounding a number of cities. They've taken control of a provincial capital. They assassinated government officials. Has all of that caused any reflection, second thoughts on the part of the White House when it comes to the Afghanistan policy or any changes in the strategy there?
Well, first, let me strongly condemn, on behalf of the government, of course, the assassination of Dawa Khan Manipal, the director of the Afghan Governmental Information Media Center. His murder follows the bombing attack in Kabul earlier this week that targeted the acting Afghan defense minister. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for this later attack, and there's no reason to doubt reports they're responsible. Additionally, there are credible reports, as you've touched on, of atrocities and retaliation against civilians in other Taliban-controlled areas, which, of course, we are closely tracking and concerned about. If the Taliban, our view is that if the Taliban claim to want international legitimacy, these actions are not going to get them the legitimacy they seek. They do not have to stay on this trajectory. They could choose to devote the same energy to the peace process as they are to their military campaign. We strongly urge them to do so. This is what the Afghan people so urgently need, deserve, after decades of war, and is very much in Afghanistan's neighbors' interest to invest renewed energy into a peace process that promotes a peaceful Afghanistan and stable region. As it relates to the decision, we knew from the beginning, and the president would be the first to say this, that there are difficult choices a commander-in-chief needs to make on behalf of the American people. The president made clear after 20 years at war, it's time for American troops to come home. And as he said at the time, the status quo was not an option. The Taliban was prepared to attack U.S. and NATO troops after May 1st, which was the deadline for our departure. He also feels and has stated that the Afghan government and the Afghan National Defense Forces have the training, equipment, and numbers to prevail. And now is the moment for the leadership and the will in the face of the Taliban's aggression and violence.
Follow-up question about Afghanistan, please. Thank you very much, Jen. As she asked about the senior journalist has been killed today, Afghan government, Afghan leaders like President Ghani and all leaders in Afghanistan nowadays said that Pakistan is behind of the Taliban activity very systematically. They are injured. Now, Afghan people did not understand that Pakistan is our enemy, or our neighbor, or friend. What do you think? Which role Pakistan should play to bring Taliban the peace process?
Our view continues to be it's in the interest of all countries in the region for there to be a political process, peace, and stability in the region. Go ahead, Kelly.
Could you describe a little bit about what the overarching ask is within the federal government to look at things like what levers do you have to further spur vaccination? On the nursing home piece, is it using Medicare dollars and linking that to nursing homes? Is it regulatory action? What sorts of things can you help us to understand where that policy might go?
Well, I certainly understand your question. I'm not going to be able to lay out too many details of internal conversations. I will note that certainly we have applauded the steps taken by a number of states as it relates to requirements of nursing home employees and health providers to get vaccinated. We've seen states do that. We've seen some health providers do that. That's a positive step. And as noted in some of the reporting, that's an area of early discussion. But again, early pre-decisional discussion. We're going to make decisions from the federal government that we believe will save lives and we believe will protect the most vulnerable populations, that will incentivize more people getting vaccinated and bring an end to the virus. There are pros and cons to many of these policies. That's part of the discussion as well.
Does it extend to other, we've talked nursing homes, is it affecting travel? Is it affecting other types of businesses? Could you just broaden it a bit for us to understand?
There are obviously a number of private sector companies that have taken their own steps. We certainly applaud that. And there are a range of topics and industries under discussion internally. But again, the best step that can happen out there is for Americans going out and getting vaccinated. And there are private sector companies that are in the lead and continue to be in the lead on moving this forward. That's a positive step. But there are ongoing internal discussions. I'm not going to be able to preview those too extensively from here.
Thank you. First on the jobs report, if the economy is so great and you guys are celebrating jobs being created at a
Wouldn't you say
historic-
over 900,000 jobs created is pretty good?
So this is my question. Why then is the president still pushing for big relief packages, pandemic era relief packages like the eviction moratorium?
Well, first I would say one of the biggest pieces of legislation he's pushing for, as we know, is the infrastructure package and also the Build Back Better agenda. Most of the components in those packages are long-term investments. They're overdue. They're meant to modernize our infrastructure, put people back to work over the long term, and make us more competitive over the long term. It is still a reality, even with a good jobs number this month, and even with 4 million jobs created over 6 months, that there are still people out of work. There are still people who don't have enough money to make ends meet. That's one of the reasons why we designed the American Rescue Plan to have a long-term, spread-out impact, whether it's the child tax credit or benefits that are going to schools that are spread out over the course of a year, because we are still in a recovery.
Back to school question. Florida's Governor DeSantis says that he may start withholding funds from school districts that don't let parents opt out of policies that require masks in the classroom. Does the president think that parents should have that kind of power?
Well, I think I've spoken to this a few times, but I will say, as a parent myself of 2 young children, that I want public health officials to make decisions about how to keep my kids safe, not politicians. And not only is Governor DeSantis not abiding by public health decisions, he's fundraising off of this. So my view is that, and our view as an administration, is that parents in Florida, parents across the country should have the ability and the knowledge that their kids are going to school and they're in safe environments. That shouldn't be too much to ask.
He says that his concern is about harmful emotional, academic, and psychological effects of putting kindergartners in masks for hours at a time. Is there any concern from officials that you guys talked to in your early pre-decisional discussions about that?
No, there's not. And I will tell you from personal experience, my rising kindergartner told me 2 days ago she could wear a mask all day, and she's just happy to go to camp and go to school. And the objective from all of our public health officials has been clearly, and our Secretary of Education, kids need to be in school. We know there's a mental health impact of them not being in school, and we should take the mitigation measures needed in order for them to be in school and in the classroom, including masking and including allowing that to be part of a reality in these schools to keep the community safe. Go ahead.
On the infrastructure bill, there's a cryptocurrency tax provision in the bill, and some bipartisan lawmakers have suggested an alternative to the White House-backed cryptocurrency. Is the White House asking for those lawmakers, it's Wyden, Toomey, and Loomis, to withdraw their crypto amendment?
Well, first, we are pleased with the progress that has yielded a compromise sponsored by Senators Warner, Portman, and Sinema to advance the bipartisan infrastructure package and clarify the measure to reduce tax evasion in the cryptocurrency market, which of course is the objective, or was the initial objective. We believe this provision will strengthen tax compliance in this emerging area of finance and ensure that high-income taxpayers are contributing what they owe under the law, which is part of our objective. We are also very grateful to Chairman Wyden and other leaders in the Senate in pushing the Senate to address this issue. But we believe that the alternative amendment put forward by Senators Warner, Portman, and Sinema strikes the right balance and makes an important step forward in promoting tax compliance.
Would the White House prefer that Wyden withdraw his amendment then?
We'll leave the mechanics up to Leader Schumer, but certainly we see this amendment as an option that helps address the concerns.
Thanks. And you've seen that he has talked about how the White House-backed proposal, that Sinema proposal, wouldn't be good for climate because it pushes, it undermines some forms of crypto that use less energy. So his argument is that there's a climate environment argument there. Do you have a reaction to that?
Well, again, we're very grateful to his leadership. He's been a key partner to us in this effort to move this initiative forward. I would just go back to the overarching objective here, which is reducing tax evasion in the cryptocurrency market. And we feel that the compromise sponsored by Senators Warner, Portman, and Sinema is a good option moving forward. Go ahead.
9/11 families are saying today that President Biden should not participate in any memorial events unless there's information declassified that could show some link with Saudi Arabia to the attacks. Is he going to follow through with that and release that information?
Well, our hearts are with the families who lost loved ones on 9/11, especially in these days preceding the 20th anniversary of the attacks coming up just next month. I know you didn't ask this, but I just want to share that the White House Office of Public Engagement and the National Security Council staff have had several meetings with groups representing the families of those who perished on 9/11 regarding their document requests and to hear their thoughts on policy priorities. That will continue to be a priority. As a candidate, which you may be aware of, Alex, President Biden made a commitment to 9/11 families to ask the Department of Justice to work constructively on resolving issues relating to the previous administration's invocation of the state secrets privilege, including adhering to guidance issued in the Obama-Biden administration that the invocation of such a privilege be narrowly tailored and not be undertaken to prevent embarrassment to a person or organization. He remains committed to that pledge he made during the campaign. Of course, any steps would be taken by the Department of Justice.
Secondly, I want to ask if the president supports a redo in the Amazon union matter. Is he calling for another vote on that? Is he going to publicly advocate for workers on that front?
Certainly, the president is a strong supporter of collective bargaining rights and the rights of workers. It has been for decades throughout his career. It would be up for the workers to make that decision, and certainly we would leave that process to move forward accordingly. Go ahead, Asma.
There's been some reporting